who will be responding to how they apply technology and the work that they do. Rodney Sanchez is the CEO and founder of Purple Neuron. And Kathy Keith is the director of the Regional Development Corporation in northern New Mexico. Natasha Martel is with Intel, she's their community manager. And I have to just say that all three of them really did us a special favor today. Natasha just came back from maternity leave last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
And Kathy Keith is camping with her family this week in Pecos. She came to be here with us today. And Rodney is a big traveler, and so he's taken some time to come with us today during his travels. So I'll let you start. Okay.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me. My name is Raj Sanchez. A little bit about kind of the background and what I'd like to talk with you all about today. So I started here at Intel, and I managed a program called Community Solutions. And essentially what it was is we were finding here at Intel that people outside of Intel had really good ideas for products or technologies, but there was no way to really pair them with the people inside of Intel that could help them develop it. So we created this Community Solutions group to address that need. Later I went on to found another company, a software development company, that focused on software development for motion picture production. And so we partnered again, with Intel and HP and came up with some solutions for big companies like DreamWorks and Sony ImageWorks, Pixar, to help them, produce their animated films more technically efficiently. I say all this because in that whole sort of experience, I found that many of these companies want to do more business in New Mexico, more technical business in New Mexico, but they always come back to what does the talent pool look like? How many software developers and tech people do you have in New Mexico? And, while we have an okay answer for that, with the labs and with Intel here and others, I started to recognize there's an opportunity for a place like New Mexico. The digital media industry, which includes gaming, mobile app development, software development, is projected to be a $300 billion industry by the end of 2015. And there's no state in the U.S. outside of California that is really the epicenter for all of this activity. And so I think we as a state have an opportunity to intersect some of those economic opportunities if we can cultivate this sort of technical workforce here in New Mexico. About a year and a half ago, I started working with a group of high schools here in New Mexico. I took a faculty position at the University of New Mexico and another one at New Mexico Highlands University with the goal of, again, with my colleagues in California and throughout the world really Skyping in, could we teach things like software development to some of these high school kids, students, and going on to the university and then eventually on to the economy. And, again, a year and a half later, again, thank you for Intel support, financial support as well. These students are producing, world-class professional quality projects. They released their first video game, got it published. They've done mobile apps for healthcare, for businesses, mobile games, and they're just kind of exploding. That kind of led to the newest thing that I've been working on. It's called the Innovation Lab. And it's a place where, some of these students could come and work on real-world projects. So if, the idea is that if any of you all, a business, an entity in the community, need a mobile app or a software, a customized piece of software, or even something as simple as a website, I put these students up against any professional out there, and it gives them, some experience to work on real-world projects, while at the same time giving, the community an economic asset to help their business, again, whether it's a mobile app or a software or things like that. And so many of these students are, have gone on to college, are taking my courses at the university, and I really think that, by cultivating that, it really could spark an economic, sort of opportunity for New Mexico. And these students absolutely have the talent. They just need a little, kind of exposure, a little bit of training, a little bit of mentorship. And before you know it, they know more than I do on some of these things. So anyway, that's what I've been working on. Any questions?
If you're an organization that needs help developing like a website, how will we find information about the student?
Yeah, I'll give you my contact information and you can contact me directly. Thank you.
Kathy Keith with the Regional Development Corporation. Thank you all for having me today. Wonderful lunch and great connections that we've made this morning. What a good conversation to be able to engage in this morning and take part in. So my organization runs a number of different programs, and they're all around creating a stronger economy in northern New Mexico. We're based in Espanola, and we basically serve communities from Santa Fe up to the Colorado border through Taos. My friends at the Taos Community Foundation are here with us today, so good to see them. And some other programs also in Las Vegas and Mora as a part of our northern New Mexico family. So really what we're about, our bottom line, is about jobs. We do a survey every year of community leaders, of about 400 community leaders throughout northern New Mexico, including nonprofit, education, local elected officials, and 84% of them on a consistent basis for the last 3 to 5 years have said that the one thing that northern New Mexico lacks is jobs and opportunities for jobs. So it's an issue that we're all working hard on. It is, in my vision and kind of what our organization believes in, it's the answer to poverty. That if we actually had parents who were working in jobs where they were happy and could sustain their lifestyle, that we would have children growing up in poverty in northern New Mexico, which is one of the biggest issues that we face. The region that we serve, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, if we pulled Los Alamos out of the picture, we would have poverty rates higher than that of Appalachia. And that's been a long-term and chronic model for us. So we believe that the answer to that is by creating jobs to give people the higher incomes and lifestyles that they need to pull themselves out of poverty. My organization runs something called the Venture Acceleration Fund, and I wanted to try and link this to our conversation this morning. The purpose of that fund is to fund startup companies. So I think you heard Lisa, at least this morning, talk a lot, throw some terms out that may be things that are unfamiliar. There's a total different lingo involved in the startup of a business, whether they're technology or not technology, but we hear it a lot in technology. So she said things to you like platform, exits, seed funding. Those may not be familiar lingo to this crowd. They are to us because we work with these technology companies and other companies as they start to figure out how they survive in the world, basically. So I think one of the things that I have to offer about this morning's conversation is, as you look at these technology companies and who you work with, there's kind of a different set of language that they may be speaking. So we may have to, have a dictionary, a glossary of terms as we work with startups to understand some of the things they're talking about. So one of the things that Lisa said to you this morning was, by the way, my Venture Acceleration Fund that our organization runs funded the platform technology, so the initial technology that Lisa uses now. We funded her 4 or 5 years ago in being able to do that. So this is kind of how this works. Seed funding is what she talked about being very critical to these businesses that are trying to get these technologies going. And seed funding is basically the very first funding a company gets when they have a great idea. So I have a great idea for how I'm going to change the world through technology, but I have no way to fund that. Traditionally, what we find is what happens, they call friends and family are the first ones in to fund these kinds of businesses and startups. And in a region where we have such high poverty rates, that doesn't happen, nor does it have the opportunity to happen. So we've created a seed fund that helps these companies at the very initial stages get out the door. And once they can get seed funding and put a product together, then they can go out to other investors and say, look, I have something now. And once they actually have revenue in the door, then they can go out to a bank and become self-sustaining. But the biggest hurdle for them, which is what they will tell you time and time again, is seed funding. And we have very, very limited access to seed funding in the state of New Mexico for these startup businesses. So we started in 2006 our organization with Los Alamos National Laboratory as our partner in designing a program that could get seed funding out. In the beginning, we were all about technology, and the laboratory wanted us to be all about their technology. It didn't work so well. I hope that others in the room can laugh about things like that they've done, that we've had to reiterate because it didn't work so well. We found very few of those businesses that we could actually fund. We then opened it up to more innovation, to say anybody who has a great idea, why don't you come in and give us a try and tell us how a little bit of funding in the end could help you build a business that can create jobs in northern New Mexico. So last year we got 61 applications after the vetting process in. We were able to fund 4 of those companies to get them started and out the door. We survey those companies every year. They have in total created 735 jobs of the 50 some odd companies that we have funded over the years. So and their average wage is about $50,000 a year, which in northern New Mexico is above our median average wage. Our goal is to create jobs that are above what our average wage is, so that we're bringing everybody up by the jobs that we create. So it's another aspect of working in technology and startups companies, is looking at how we get these companies first started, and secondly, how they survive, so that they create jobs, more than just Lisa creating a job for herself. But Lisa also will tell you that she employs 15 people in the state of New Mexico. And our companies have great stories about the people that they employ. So we have invested in a Taos company that manufactures holistic makeup. So they do all organic type body products. So if any of you walk into Whole Foods and buy anything that's a 365 brand lotion, lipstick, all of that is manufactured in Taos, New Mexico. Their chief operations officer will tell you a long story about being out of school for 10 years and not really knowing what she wanted to do, and having 3 children and being a single mother and trying to figure out how she fit in. The company took her in. She started in a very entry-level job for them. They have paid for her education, and this year she will receive her engineering degree, and she's the chief operational officer. So these companies that we invest in also create opportunities for people in our communities, which is a good way of looking at making those initial investments in these companies as well. So I'm trying to connect it back to our great panelists this morning, who I think gave us some really good aspects on how technology can be used in nonprofits. But I think there's another side of that too, that Lisa talked really nicely about in her struggles of how she gets one of these companies up and off the ground. It's not as easy as you would think. It's really tough competition out there, and especially those initial seed fundings to get these companies going are very difficult to come by.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Natasha Martel-Jackson, and I work here at Intel in our Public Affairs Department. I manage our education programs as well as our media relations. Work closely with Ron Epps, who oversees our community programs, and Ron and I actually work very closely together in our funding efforts and the philanthropy that Intel provides for our surrounding community. Our focus is basically the state of New Mexico, and with the programs that we have, we tend to look through the different focus areas that each of us has in our office in public affairs here. So there are only 4 of us in the office serving all of New Mexico. And as I mentioned, I'm looking through the lens of education, STEM education, teacher training. Ron is looking through the lens of community development and improving quality of life, and then Liz Shipley in our office is looking through the lens of government affairs and policy and advocacy. And so we try to see where all of those intersect and what projects we can fund. And really what I wanted to share with you today is sort of my viewpoint of the transition of funding and education over the years as I've been doing it. So I've been doing this work now for Intel for over 10 years, and it seems like when we started, when you talked about funding education and funding technology and education, pretty much the grants we were reading were like, I need iPads for my classroom and that sort of thing. And it's really gotten a lot more integrated and a lot more collaborative in the type of work that we do. So, for example, one of the areas that we put a lot of focus on most recently is the Maker Initiative. Are a lot of you familiar with the Maker Fairs and the Maker Initiatives? And we're looking at that through education, bringing that Maker Initiative and that world of innovation through students. So we've done some teacher training on development boards, getting teachers comfortable with coding, even though they don't need to know coding from ground one because most of it is open source. We just want the teachers to be more comfortable with that, to be able to bring that technology into their classrooms and offer it to their students. And what we're seeing with the Maker movement is a lot of what our panelists have been talking about today is that economic development piece. So a lot of these can be looked at as hobbies or things that people like to do on the side, sort of tinkering in technology. But some of these ideas really do become products and things that are marketable and manufacturable. And that's what we really want to help foster. So one of the other programs that we did recently, and I was so excited to see her here this morning, she's gone now, Michelle Miller, who runs HD3, the High Desert Discovery District, also does work looking at technology ventures and really giving people an avenue to come to pitch their ideas in technology. Well, we partnered with Michelle's organization early last year, and we targeted specifically millennials that had ideas. And I thought it was really interesting the way this was done because it wasn't just through the universities, which would be our usual avenue for Intel and large organizations to work. This is millennials, so you're just getting an age group. Maybe some of them aren't in college right now, but they have some really good ideas. So being able to have those new collaborations, looking at things a little bit differently than we have traditionally, has given us at Intel an opportunity to get involved in some really exciting areas for technology and technology development right here in New Mexico. So that's really what I wanted to share with you all. Kathy also mentioned that I'm just returning back from maternity leave. So it's weird being a parent because now I'm looking at things through my son's eyes, and oh my gosh. But I think of education and just how it's changing and how the needs of education are changing for my son who's just now 6 months old. And so I went to school and I studied mechanical engineering. That's how I started working at Intel. And then went on to do programs that tried to get other underrepresented minorities into engineering and technical fields. But I think about my son and what he's going to need 16, 18 years from now. And it's still going to be those 21st century skills. It may not be under the umbrella of engineering as we know it and call it now, but it is going to be those 21st century skills of problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration. And that's what you see at the center of technology. And so the other intersection of that is really this entrepreneurship, which we are all trying to foster. And so when I really think of it from a funder's perspective, if it has those areas of either a science, technology, engineering, and math, if it fosters that collaboration and critical thinking, that's something that we at Intel want to be involved in. And so that's really how we're looking at our funding strategy today. So thank you very much.
Well, we have time for, I think, just a couple of questions. Anybody have any questions for any of our panelists?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions in terms of the definition of seed funding. In terms, is there an average amount of money that is considered seed money and that there's funding available for? And when you narrowed applications down from like 32 to 4, did it need to be 4 because there was a lack of funding to do a fifth one? Or was it because you didn't have 5 good ideas?
We'll start with the last one. So it was because of lack of funding. We have what we have, and we make the best decisions with what we have. I think we're all in that boat. And we're looking at ways now of how we increase that fund, including when we started the fund in the beginning, it was basically a grant to businesses to get started. It is now a zero interest loan. So with some pretty patient terms, because we're funding companies that probably aren't going to have revenues for 4 to 5 years. But we've worked out a mechanism in which they pay us back. In fact, we received our first payback into the fund last year from a company in Moriarty in Santa Fe County who was acquired by Google, who wrote us a $30,000 check back, no questions answered, and we used that to fund the next entrepreneur behind them in the fund. So our fund has become evergreen in the last 3 years, and we see that as a good way to sustain the fund for a longer period of time. We would have loved to. So of the 61 applications that came in, those were the applications that basically made the finals. We had more than that, but they really didn't. We had some that really didn't meet the criteria, but the 61 were the valid ones that we had. What do we look at for success for those companies? We have pretty specific guidelines. We look at their ability to create jobs because that's something that we're investing in and we want to get out of this. I mean, we want more jobs in our region. We look at their ability to access other funding sources because we realize the funding that we give them in the beginning is not all that they're going to need to develop their business. Most of them that come in are going to need other kinds of funding as well. So for example, some companies in the higher tech companies, what they look like is we'll take a little bit of seed funding from you, and then maybe we'll go on to angel investment. I know Michelle left, but Michelle Miller also runs an angel investment group. We have 2 of them in New Mexico now. And these are individuals who have wealth, and instead of investing in Wall Street, they decide to take it away from their broker and invest in New Mexico companies. And generally that's the next line of funding that we see for those companies. And then some of them go on to venture funding, and some of them by that point can go into a bank if that's the way that they want to go. Our fund does up to $100,000, but our average award amount is about $50,000 that we do. And I think that you would see through the angel investments, which are usually the next ones in the door after us, they're really in that same range. If they can pull 2 or 3 angel investors together, sometimes they can get up to $100,000 mark. But that's the first funding in order to develop a product so you can get to a place where you can generate revenue.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You all three talked about innovation and entrepreneurship in different parts. How do you see the grant-making community coming together to push innovation and social entrepreneurship in the nonprofit sector?
So I primarily deal with the for-profit industry, but you know, a lot of these students, you know, as I told you, they take on projects from organizations or businesses or whatever, but it really sparks ideas in their own minds around, you know, here's my own entrepreneurial idea. And I've been seeing a lot of these students have entrepreneurial ideas around, you know, society and making a positive social impact. So, you know, it comes down to, you know, these students have really good ideas, but obviously need funding. So they rely on organizations for that seed funding, you know, venture capital funding, etc. And it's, you know, one of those sources is grants, you know, and, you know, that's how they, you know, sometimes can get started. So I think that's important as some of these students launch not only entrepreneurial ideas, but programmatic ideas around entrepreneurship that, could use grant funding.
Thanks, Tim. And I would say that, events like today, just taking advantage of conversations and new collaborations that you may not have thought of. I know I'm very excited to follow up with quite a few people here to talk about it, but I think that that's a lot of the work that Ron and I will do, is go out and have these new conversations and think, who else can we bring to the table? What other stakeholders do we think might be interested and or have some resources that we may not have to build a cohort of collaboration to really foster these new ideas and innovation. So.
Well, I want to thank the panelists very much and also for Lisa and TJ, who really gave a tremendous presentation to us today and interactive dialogue. Just a couple of three housekeeping details I want you to give away.
Funny.
That big. So he's going to.
Who won the border?
We want you to fill out your evaluations. You can do that today. Lois will be sending out a survey monkey. That's not to procrastinate, but you will get one. And the third thing is that, Ron, I want you to end with what people need to do in terms of the tour. So I'll let you go, Michael.
I'll let you go first.
Go ahead.
I should decide on the border tour.
Okay. So and the Marginalia award, the decorated margins, goes to Fatima. Would you please bring up your? And you're the recipient of the tech in the bunny suit in the back. Thank you so much for your willingness to be a little foolish with us all today, and for participating and bringing the richness of conversation that you did. So, give it back to Kathy.
I'll give it to Ron. But thank you, Michael. And I corroborate it.
So thank you everyone for coming today. If you're planning on doing the tour with me afterwards, why don't we'll just meet back in the lobby. We'll have to get everyone badged in order to go on the tour. So this will give you a chance to maybe do a bathroom break before we walk off, because there's probably not going to be a lot of chance to hit a restroom on our tour site. And when do we need to be back here? 2. Okay, so the tour will take about an hour. So we'll just meet right out here in the lobby.
Yeah, thank you very much. I enjoyed spending the time with all of you today.